千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. As ever, I would like to extend a warm welcome to one and all. Thank you for joining us. I want to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. So this is the most important point to be made in this particular chapter. It's life affirming, it's also directing, it's helpful, it's mentoring for all of us, it's guiding for all of us to live our lives in the best possible way. So I want to spend a little bit more time on it just to make sure that we drive home the point. This is the true value of the Daodejing that we're discussing now. Outward versus inward. Do you turn your gaze to the external material world, or do you turn that gaze inward to your own thoughts, your own feelings, where you really want to be, your vision for the future, your dreams? So there's the external, and then there's the internal. The emphasis is very different. So the outward is the last line that's talking about value living, 贵身. Remember, that's about putting an excessively high value on the luxuries in life, like the ancient rulers who lived it up while the people starved. So that's the visual that really drives home the point. And then to the right-hand side, not strive for a living, that means letting go, withdrawing from the rat race, not having to be so obsessive, so attached, and then living life with that graceful flow. Okay, let's talk about exactly what each one entails. So on the left-hand side, we're talking about pursuit of life and rewards in the material world. When I say rewards, I'm purposely being generic. The rewards can be money, yes. It can be material acquisitions, yes. House, cars, jewelry, clothing, etc. All that. But it can also be the intangibles like fame, like prestige, social standing, social position, all that kind of stuff included in what we say, what we talk about when we say fame and fortune. So it's those pursuits, but it also includes physical sensations, physical pleasures that one can pursue as well in the material world. So in this particular chapter, Lao Tzu specifically talks about the ancient rulers who indulged in that, indulged in the luxuries while the people suffered. And then we bring that into the present, into the modern world. We see that it's about the ones who seek fame and fortune with external focus. So I think that all makes sense on the left-hand side. Let's take a look at what happens when the arrows are not pointing out, but pointing in. And the focus is not on the dollar sign, but on the balance in life. So that's inward, turning the gaze inward, not strive for living, letting all that go. This is refrain from obsessive striving or attachments in life. So this is represented not by the ancient rulers, but by the ancient sages who lived in harmony among people. And then mapping that to our world today, this is about spiritual Tao cultivators who seek greater awareness with introspection. So the cultivation work is internal. There's a part that external practice can play when we discuss our understanding with one another when we get together, like right now, to talk. But a lot of it happens on the inside. Now, I want to first talk about the specifics of the outward focus, the external emphasis, before wrapping it up with the internal focus, the internal emphasis. So the outward, as I mentioned, is value living. Those who seek material gains end up empty and exhausted, as I mentioned. Those who seek sensory stimulation end up numb and desensitized. That can totally happen when you get overstimulated. Then what I suggest is that it will be better just to keep yourself away from sensory stimulation for a while so that you can regain your balance. Then those who seek thrills end up jaded and disinterested. We definitely have among us, and maybe we ourselves as well, the adrenaline junkies. That can only be carried out for so long before you are exhausting yourself. So these three lines are all connected in that same mentality with the focus on the external material world. And I'm not saying that all of these are bad things. These can all be good in a smaller measure. So the consequence, your inner self is starved of spiritual sustenance. That's exactly what we talked about in the first section. Your personal relationships are neglected and in disarray. That's exactly what we talked about in the second section. And then your zest for life has faded. Nothing seems to matter. That's the disregard. That's the loss in the meaning of life that we talked about. So that can happen. Now, there's more. I want to be very specific with some examples on exactly what is commonly seen. Even in the Tao cultivating world, there are people who are cultivating the Tao, or they appear to do so, but they're doing so without substance. So remember, the external focus is all about surface appearance without the core. So what I want to do is to give you the example of the Ching vow. So here it says the Ching vow is bidirectional. What is the Ching vow? Well, let me share with everyone that there are two parts, and this is for those that want to take the vow. You don't have to take the vow, but for those who do, there are two parts to it. Part one is what's coming in through the mouth in terms of what you eat. And that vow, the vegetarian vow, to be mindful of the food that comes in. So in that vow, the person taking the vow wants to be more compassionate by adopting a vegetarian diet, to be mindful of the food that comes in. The other part, equally important, oftentimes overlooked, is to be mindful about the words that go out of the mouth, that are uttered. So in Buddhism, this is known as right speech. Buddhism has what they call the Eightfold Path, with things with elements like the right view, right action. It's all about having the right mindset, right perspective, etc. And the third among the Eightfold Path, among the 8 items, is right speech, samyak vak in Buddhism. And what it means is to abstain from lying, from speech that is abusive or divisive, and also from idle chatter, which will be rumor mongering. So in the Tao, it is about refraining from pointless complaints. Tao teachings recognize that sometimes you can have complaints that are constructive, that will lead to a positive change, an improvement. But let us all be honest and frank with ourselves. Most of the complaints that we ourselves utter in daily life, they don't go anywhere. They are complaints for the purpose of complaining. They don't actually change anything. They're just pointless complaints. Same thing with the criticisms that we utter against other people. A lot of times we just talk about other people behind their backs. Let's be honest. We're not telling them what we really think, but we're criticizing them among ourselves out of their earshot. Again, pointless. Again, something that we should watch out for, be mindful of, and indeed, something that we should refrain from doing. Overall, someone who takes the Ching vow will be very careful about, should be very careful about what is said. There can be discouraging negativity that may hinder or harm other people. And so one thing, one possibility that is sometimes observed is that you're going to have people in a Tao practicing community where someone has taken the Qingkou vow and they're very big on becoming a vegetarian. They feel superior to those who have not taken the vow. They are critical of the people who haven't. So when you see that, immediately looking at this, you can tell that they are giving the appearance of piety without the substance of the Tao. It is all about compassion to want to have this vegetarian diet that minimizes your impact on the environment. And yet, when that person is expressing complaints or criticism, that's revealing a lack of empathy and compassion. Therefore, that is one manifestation of what we're talking about. So it is, and it's not just the Qingkou vow. Overall, it's possible that one's practicing the Tao makes one arrogant and feel superior to other people. And this includes people who talk about the Tao, people who teach the Tao, write about the Tao, authors, teachers. Oftentimes, as you go further into the practice, you're going to observe that there are those who can talk about it, write about it, teach it, without being able to put anything into action. So it's a deadly trap, in my opinion. So another example, students of the Tao who cannot be consistent. So this right here is a common problem in every generation of students of the Tao. Now, this is something that Lao Zi has expressed in the Daodejing itself. In chapter 41, he's got these two lines. He talks about high-level people, then he talks about average people. Average people here of the Tao, they sometimes keep it and sometimes lose it. So this is a problem that's been persistent since the beginning and probably will be with us for as long as there are human beings. And that's because there are so many distractions in the material world. The problem is common throughout history. And it's something that we need to watch out for ourselves. And then the question becomes, can you be more consistent? Here, I'm going to humbly present that I myself have been trying to practice this for the last 20 plus years. I've been trying to be consistent in my own practice, always showing up for these meetings. Now, that's not always the case. I have seen many instances where other people will only, as an example, show up at the temple when they have a lecture they are to deliver. Other times, they just stay away, they stay home, they do other things. That is not consistency. That's exactly what Lao Tzu is talking about here. So you're not going to catch me doing that. I am going to be as consistent as I possibly can be. That is my personal guarantee to myself. Yet another example, those who project the appearance without the substance. So here's the example for that specifically. Spiritual seekers who keep trying different paths. And that's because they cannot commit to any one path. They are dabblers. They are not actually serious in their spiritual quest. And Lao Tzu points this out as well. In Daodejing, chapter 53, he says, the great Tao is broad and plain, but people like the side paths. Again, the material world is so full of distractions that there are all these appealing looking side paths that people wander into. In our world, that translates into people who, this Taoism, Taoist philosophy, this seems interesting. Let me dabble in it for a while. And after some time, they switch to something else. And this other school of philosophy, I'm going to try that too. There's nothing wrong with keeping one's options open and then trying different things so you get an idea. The problem that we see all the time is that the process of switching from one path to another never stops. And therefore, very little progress is made with any particular path. This is like digging a well in one location to a certain depth, 1 foot. There's no water. I'm going to try a different spot. Digging, 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 1 foot depth. There's no water. I'm going to try another spot. That process never stops, and therefore no water ever appears in any of the shallow diggings. Now, let me switch to the other perspective, the internal inward gaze. And remember, this is the next to last line, the penultimate line that says, not strive for living, that's better. So this is the internal approach. And there are 3 key points in living free from strife. So this is coming to us from the sages that have studied the Tao all their lives. The first is as Lao Tzu describes in chapter 27 of the Daodejing. Lao Tzu says, good traveling does not leave tracks. Good speech does not seek faults. Let's contemplate that for just a moment. Good traveling in this case is a metaphor for moving through the journey of life. Not leaving tracks is to live a life that is smooth, minimal, a light touch without impact, a harmful impact on the environment, on other people. So the metaphor that we can use is the teaching about the correct way to meditate. So Zen master would explain that think about the thoughts that enter your mind as if you are looking at a pond and you see the reflection of an eagle flying overhead. When the eagle has passed from view, disappears, the reflection disappears from the pond. The eagle has flown far away. The pond has not even a ripple to mark the passing of the eagle that has flown by. In the same way, you would want to treat your thoughts in meditation like the reflection of the eagle, let it pass, leaving no trace. Applying this to life, you would want to live your life in such a seamless, smooth, and graceful way that you come and go without leaving a trace. That's what this means. Good traveling does not leave tracks. Good speech does not seek faults. This goes back to the complaints and criticisms that I was referring to, that there are people who appear pious, and yet, listen to them for a while, get to know them, you will hear many complaints, many criticisms. They don't really have the substance of Tao cultivation. So here's the reminder for everybody. Living life like the reflection of an ego in the pond. When the ego has flown past, that's it. The ego is gone, leaving no trace behind, free of any attachments. That is the first key. Here's the second key. Lao Tzu describes this in another chapter of the Daodejing, chapter 38. High virtue is not virtuous, therefore it has virtue. What that says is that true virtue is not always talking about being virtuous, reminding oneself to be virtuous. It is not intentionally virtuous, it is natural. Therefore, it has virtue, it is true virtue. True virtue flows naturally from the heart. There is therefore no need to appear virtuous. It is only when it does not flow naturally from the heart that one makes this intentional effort on purpose to appear as virtuous as possible. In modern times, we say virtue signaling. So virtue signaling would not be the expression of true virtue. And then we have the third key point about living free from strife, to not have any of that striving in living your life. And this is also described by Lao Tzu, this time, chapter 41. Building virtue appears inactive. True substance appears inconstant. So I want everyone to pay attention that this is addressing appearance, which is external, and then true substance, internal, true virtue, also internal. So what this is saying is that virtues that are cultivated within, not going to be necessarily obvious to other people. That is, the work happens within the internal, mental, and spiritual landscape. Therefore, other people may not even know that that is what's going on. And because of that, you have an internal guide. You have a compass within that tells you where you are going in life. Now, that is going to, because you have that North Star internally, you are then free to vary your approach. You can be flexible on going to that goal. The goal itself is constant. It's Tao cultivation. It's greater awareness. It's enlightenment. How you get there can vary. Sometimes it's about reading. Sometimes it's about meditation. Sometimes it's about discussion with other people. Whatever gets you there can be very flexible. So the constant internal guide allows for that flexible approach. But then from other people, they don't know about the internal guide. It's invisible to them. They don't know about the internal virtue. It's invisible to them. Therefore, from their perspective, you appear to be inactive in the virtues, and you appear to be inconstant because you are changing your approach. So I hope that makes sense. So that is the last, and just like this chapter has been 3 sections of 3 lines, these are the 3 major points about living life in accordance with the Tao. Let's go ahead and sum it up for this one here. Not striving for living, the inward focus, the inward internal emphasis. Lao Tzu points to this as the better path. For the ancient ruler, which we started out with in this chapter, the better path is the path to greatness. For you and I, for all of us living in the modern world, the better path is the path to your best life. That's why we call it the Tao. The Tao is the path or the way. It is the path that we should all be on. And that's why the last 2 lines of this particular chapter ends with, therefore, those who do not strive for living are better than those who value living. Those 2 lines may have been puzzling before, but as you can see, when we put it under a microscope at this, it is as clear as can be. Lao Tzu, in originally writing these lines, had every intention to explain things simply. It's just that the complexity of life makes us sometimes misunderstand or misinterpret his words. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.